Afternoon, everybody. As a preliminary matter, this is Patrick Pitney, Chair. Please permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mo DiPaolo? Mo's still present. Kristen Lass?
Present.
Kevin Anderson?
Present.
Keith Baldinger?
Present.
Justine Snyder?
Present.
Joe Morrow?
Present.
John Ombra? John,
Present.
I saw you there. All right,
Present.
very good.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. That's all right. Donna O'Connor.
Present.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Angela Snell. And Alex Martinez.
Present.
Mo, are you out there? I'm sure he'll be with us in a minute. Good afternoon. This open meeting of the Police Station Building Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. The order allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of this meeting. For this meeting, the Police Station Building Committee is convening by Google Meet as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please be sure to press *6 to mute your device. The meeting will not feature public comment. Please wait until I open the item for public comment, then press *6 to unmute your device. And this meeting is called to order. So the first thing on the agenda is we have the minutes from April 26th, 2021, our last meeting. Any comments or questions?
Move we approve.
Hi, Mo. We have a motion to
Hi, Pat.
approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of April 26, 2021. All those in favor? Mo?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
Chief Anderson?
Aye.
Keith?
Aye.
Justine?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Donna?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Thank you, everybody. Next item, review and act on the following bills, schedules, and warrants. We do not have any, so we'll skip over that. And we are on to reports. We have a report from the owner's project manager. Neil, how are you today?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm very well.
We have nothing new to report as of tonight.
Well, that was just succinct. Any questions based on that? Nothing out there. Okay. How about from Matt and Jeff from the architect?
Well, I'm back from vacation and I'm never succinct. So if you let me share my screen, I got a few slides that we can go through.
Please.
With me tonight, I also have CES. Brad Park from CES is here tonight as well, and Dan Delaney, Victoria Hull from Fuss and O'Neill, who each have a portion of this presentation that they'll be giving. Yeah. All right. Can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, we got one monitor and I'm used to two, so I can't see all your faces tonight, but we'll do our best. These are the items on the agenda. They're a little out of order from your agenda here, so we're going to just touch on the lead certification and service that was touched on last meeting. We're going to review those two design development estimate alternates that were presented last as well, so we can act on those. We have an update to the stormwater mitigation plan that was presented at Conservation a few weeks ago. So we can review what we had originally and where we're going with that. And then we have some updated landscaping and plaza design images, some ideas of what some of these things are going to start looking like, and then some new renderings of the plaza and front entry landscaping as well. So the first item is just the LEED certification. So I believe Jeff and Tyler went through this at the last meeting, that we're seeking an addition of $80,000 in funds for us on the design side to do the LEED tracking, filings, some enhanced energy modeling beyond what we're already doing, and then compiling and issuing the reports for all of the points that we'd be, credits that we'd be seeking, and sending those to USGBC. And then working through construction administration with the CM through the award of the certification. Again, we're seeking silver. Currently designing to LEED certifiable, so you're going to be getting the same building whether or not we proceed with this, but you would have the notoriety of having this certified if we so choose to go that route. I just wanted to add, we just broke this down slightly, that we would have about 50,000 of that fee of the total 80,000 would be through the design to construction, and then about 30,000 of that fee, about a third of it would be the administration during construction, working with Fontaine. And then one item that's not in that wasn't presented last week is there's an estimated, it's about $5,000 for the fees through the U.S. Green Building Council for the filing. So I don't know if you want to save this till the end, or we can talk about it now.
Why don't you keep going, Matt? We'll handle all of this at the end.
Okay, very good. And then so, as presented at the last meeting, there were two alternates that we had estimated out separately from the project. The first being the pre-action fire protection system in the evidence storage room. So that was about $45,000. And the second being the building CO2 monitoring and control, which is a demand control ventilation system, which is a $250,000 add to the budget. About I think the pre-action fire protection system was pretty well understood and pretty straightforward from what I gathered at the last presentation. So I'm not going to talk any more on that, but I did bring Brad from CES, and he's got a few slides on the second piece of this. So I'm going to turn it over to him.
Sure. How's everyone doing tonight? So I did want to jump on this tonight, guys, to talk a little bit about ventilation within the building and demand control ventilation, just to help everyone understand what this ad is really entails. So I guess first and foremost, I want to start the conversation by clarifying that as our design sits today, every space within the building is ventilated to meet the current codes. If you recall from some of our previous conversations several months back, we're utilizing a dedicated outdoor air system to ventilate the building, which is a very efficient way of ventilating and provides very good indoor air quality. So that's kind of our base starting point. Demand controlled ventilation comes into play where we can monitor CO2 levels and in fact reduce the amount of ventilation provided in a certain room. So let's take, I say this is applicable to the training room, patrol, roll call, some of those spaces that can have high occupant densities for a time period, but then can be reduced elsewhere. Jeff, did you have a question?
No, I'm sorry. I was trying to make the images bigger.
Oh, it said you raised your hand, so I didn't know if you were already questioning me. So,
Yeah, whole thing's questionable.
so as I was saying, this would apply to spaces that have at certain times high occupant density, like a training room, but then at other parts of the day would have a very reduced occupancy density. So what the CO2 allows us to do is monitor, or what the CO2 sensors would allow us to do is monitor the level of CO2 in the room. And based on that, we can make an assumption of how many people are in the room and reduce the amount of outside air we're bringing into that space. And all of that is geared towards trying to save some additional energy. So as you can imagine, If you have a certain space, you need to bring in a certain amount of air, you reduce it, you can use a little bit less fan energy to move that air. In order to implement this fully throughout the building, it does require some additional equipment and controls, which is where you saw that $250,000 number. And essentially what that's buying us is some additional equipment. So Matt, if you can go to the next slide. This is just a quick picture of essentially what I was explaining, where, the picture on the left, we have, multiple occupants in the room. And if you see at the top right-hand corner of that first image, it says 200 CFM outside air. So this is essentially your worst case scenario. Peak load, we got to bring in 200 CFM. Now, if that goes down and we only have 2 people in the room, our CO2 levels have been reduced. So on the image on the right, you can see it's now saying I need 120 CFM of outside air. So that's obviously a fairly simplistic process to understand. However, implementing it requires some additional controls and equipment. So if you see, they have a little black line there that you see kind of moves a little bit. What that's trying to represent is a damper. So you need to have a damper that can regulate that air this way. And essentially that gets installed within the ductwork, and the CO2 sensor communicates with that damper and reduces that damper when it's able to. Each one of those requires a couple different control points to them that gets tied into the building management system, the BMS. So there's some costs associated with there. And then just the number of them throughout the building. Once you start playing with air volumes in the building, once you start reducing air in one area, you have to now have controls on all the rooms in the building, so that if we reduce the airflow in one room, we don't affect another room in the building. This is especially important on the exhaust side of things. So if we start reducing the amount of supply we're bringing into the building, we also have to then control the exhaust within the building as well. We don't want the building to become super negative when you start drawing in moisture from the outside. So those are all the things that go into play here. So Matt, if you go to the next slide, I did a real brief evaluation of what this would look like. And the first cost, $250 to $285, that's around where the estimators were at. So it's somewhere in that ballpark. And then from the energy modeling we've been doing, we know that our annual ventilation cost, the operating cost to operate our ventilation system, costs around $11,500 as it sits without demand-controlled ventilation. If we were to implement demand-controlled ventilation and reduce airflow when we can get that number down to $9,250. So the approximate savings is around $2,250. Again, these are approximate numbers, but it's in that sort of ballpark. So you can get a sense of what this number is compared to what that first cost is. Now, ultimately, you are saving money, and we've had these similar conversations with other owners. And if you can get that into the project for what you've allocated in funds for the project, it can be a good buy, because you are at the end of the day reducing your annual operating cost by a few $1,000s, which is a positive. But if you looked at it on a strictly return on investment basis, it doesn't have a huge payback. And a lot of that just comes down to the amount of equipment and controls you have to add in to implement this. So I know, Keith, you may have some thoughts. Other members may have thoughts as well, and I'm happy to talk to them. I'm sure there's some maintenance side of things Keith may be concerned about adding things in that would be included in this, but that's kind of the overall big picture. But questions, comments?
Yeah. Why don't we stop here? I think there are probably several questions out there.
Sure.
Who would like to?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I'll start, I
Sure.
guess. So, speaking to Brad's point, I mean, does make the system more complicated. I do think it'll be a much more comfortable building with this in it, and like you said, the return on investment based on the cost of it is not very good. But if you think about the operating cost of the building, I mean, it certainly helps the town's operating budget to reduce it. And like I said, the interesting thing about this building is it is occupied 24 hours a day, but we don't occupy every space. So areas like the training room, like if we didn't have this, it might just be pumping outside air in, which takes more time to heat and takes more energy to heat it or cool it. So it's kind of wasted utility. So I think in the grand scheme of things, it's much better for the building for many reasons, both comfort, operating costs, and then those two things, I guess, are the most for me.
Sure.
Thanks, Keith. Anybody else?
Yeah, Pat, Joe Morrow.
All right, Joe, please.
So on that point, I know my past experience with doing the building in Southborough and talking to other, one of the issues was balancing the environment in the building. And a lot of research we had done, it takes a good year plus to get a good balance in the building to get the system right. Is this going to help improve with that? So it reduces the time and the balance will be better in the building? And I don't know if you can answer that, Keith, or Brad, or whoever wants to answer that.
I can say there's probably pros and cons to it, Joe. In some ways, it gives you more controllability. So when we now have a VAV box or a damper in every room, now in order for that box to operate, it has to monitor airflow. So you're getting a real world number of how much air is going into each space now, or each zone. So you have more data available to you to certainly be able to troubleshoot and get an idea of how much air is in the building and in each space and everything like that. So it certainly gives you an advantage there. Probably the only downside is it's a much more dynamic environment. So if you have airflows changing to different spaces throughout the day, it's more dynamic. So that would obviously create a little bit more of a challenge in balancing. But overall, you do get I'd say you get a benefit from this.
Okay, thank you. Just one more question on that. I don't remember, is there going to be windows that open in the building? And if so, how is that going to affect the system, positive, negative?
I'll answer the first part, and then I think Brad can answer the second part. Yes, there will be operable windows in most of the occupiable spaces. So offices, things like that, will have some sort of an operable window. There's a lead point attributed to that.
Yep. So and when we have operable windows, with the types of systems we have, we aren't super concerned with if that system operates and the windows are open. But we can, if we think it's necessary, monitor that. It adds some more complications. It's not something we typically do. So you could add you could have a contact on the window. If someone opens the window, it sends a signal. It says, all right, you can't be air conditioning if the window is open. It adds more sensors and more complication and stuff like that. So we don't typically do it. It's a little bit more of, a training of people who are in there, understanding how everything works. But we don't typically interlock our systems with window operation.
Brad, I have a question. Will this be under the building management system?
Yep. So no matter what, this your ventilation system is incorporated into the building management system. So it's something that can be monitored and controlled, regardless of if we do any sort of enhanced control of the ventilation. We can always monitor CO2. So one of the lead points we get is just monitor CO2, and you can generate alarms or anything if for some reason it was getting to a level that was not recommended. But all of this is incorporated into the BMS.
Mo, I do see your up. You've got a question.
Yes, thank you, Pat. Can anybody tell us what the increased maintenance cost annually after this? Just maintenance, not maintenance and repairs, or maybe that's all into your operating cost?
Yeah, so we can certainly try to pinpoint that. It really comes down to there's not a lot of a maintenance in regards to the equipment. The equipment's fairly simplistic. A VAV box doesn't require much maintenance. It really comes down to controls. So if some of the sensors get out of whack, and you start, you can't maintain the airflows you were looking for. It could just be a calibration of a sensor. Those are the things you'd be looking at. So, if you do have a service contract with the controls technicians, then, that's something pretty easy for them. If you don't, then you're paying them to come out there every time to do that work. So we can try to give you an estimate of that.
Can you, Pat, if I might, Brad, how many new buildings that are going up, either public safety or whatever, are putting these additional systems in? Do you have percentage about?
Sure. I would say it's probably, honestly, it's probably 50-50. So there's a very good argument for it for all the reasons we've just spoken about. So certain towns like, Matt, Jeff, and I did a project up in Lexington recently. We incorporated it there. But we've also done work, in Charlton, and we didn't incorporate it there. And again, it comes down to certain people are really concentrated on bottom line. It's a lot of extra money. Certain people are like, wow, there's quite an advantage here to be able to control things. So it really just comes down to user preference and ultimately, what the owner's truly looking to do. But overall, Maurice, I would say it's honestly about a 50-50 split.
Pat, can I have one more thing?
Sure, Mo.
I mean, if you look at this strictly as return on investment, this doesn't make any sense. So
right.
what we're really looking at is comfort of the occupants of the building, right?
Sure, it's that, and to Keith's point, it's reducing your annual operating cost.
I don't want to trivialize it, but $2,200 a year isn't such a great savings on an investment that big. But I'd like to hear what other people have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? You stole some of my thunder, Mo, but that's okay. Anybody else out there?
Pat, Chief Anderson here.
Chief.
Matt, did you put this? I just want to make sure that I heard that correctly. You put this in Lexington Fire?
That's correct.
I will say, I'm not just saying this, but we visited there, and I did notice it was very comfortable in that building. And also, Brad, would this prevent people from opening windows because it's very comfortable?
Sure. So I'll touch on 2 points there, Kevin. Chief Anderson, the Lexington Fire is comfortable.
Mhm.
I would say the majority of the reason that building's so comfortable is because of the dedicated outdoor air system. I think Jeff and Matt can attest to that. We've done other stations without those systems and have struggled with just keeping everybody happy in that building. So that is part of it. The other part is they do have controllers over their ventilation, like we're talking about here. So that is part of it. To answer I forget, I already lost my train of thought, Chief. What was the other question? Oh, windows, in regards to windows.
Windows.
So it doesn't, would it prevent people from opening the windows? Sure. In some instances, yeah. I mean, people are going to be very satisfied with the climate in their office. So if it's always perfectly, 72 degrees and, 55% relative humidity and the CO2 satisfied, you don't have a real motivation to want to open your windows. Some people just like opening their windows anyway, Chief. I'm sure you understand. People want to listen to the birds, and it's a really nice day outside. Of course, some people do want to open their windows. You do then risk, introducing pollen and things like that. So that can be the downside. But to your point, if the comfort's there, they don't necessarily want to go and open the windows.
And one more question. If
Sure,
they
go ahead.
do open a window, does it affect just that room, or is that affecting the system for the entire building?
It really mostly just have an impact on that room, as long as that room isn't open to, various other rooms within close proximity. But I don't see it having a big impact on the whole building.
And an additional question, what was that first piece you spoke about at Lexington?
So in Lexington, we have a dedicated outdoor air system, which is the type of ventilation system that building has. We're planning on using a very the same strategy in Shrewsbury. The only difference is as it stands today, Lexington can reduce the airflow to certain spaces based on CO2 or really based on occupancy. So the overall air quality shouldn't differ.
Got it.
Thanks, Chief. Anybody else? Okay, I have a few questions myself, Brad. What is the lifespan? What's the lifespan of one of these systems?
So the system as a whole is pretty good. I mean, the real piece we're talking about is the addition of the VAV boxes in each zone. That piece is a fairly simplistic piece of equipment, and will probably get you, 25, 30 years. That's pretty much the only difference. The CO2 sensors that I talked about, those do go out of calibration over time, potentially. So if it's, that might take 5 years, it might take 10 years. It's really, dependent on the sensor and I mean, you can't predict everything, but those sensors eventually can go out of calibration and need to be recalibrated. I would say that's the biggest maintenance item to this.
That's a maintenance item, but so if we're looking at a 50-year building, this system would then need to be replaced at least once?
Certain pieces of it, yes, but that's no different than like the boilers in the building don't last 50 years and the rooftop units don't last 50 years.
Right.
So
yeah, the difference, boilers and rooftops are must-haves.
Right.
That's the big
Agreed.
There's an add-on. So,
absolutely.
Okay. I kind of agree with Mo on the return on investment, but I guess another question I have is this system, is it fully automated? So if the sensors detect something, does it immediately correct it, or is that something that has to be monitored and then manually adjusted?
No, it would be an automatic system.
Okay. All right. Very good.
No maintenance.
And I guess my last question is, what are the risks of not putting in this system? Are there any, whether it be from a health standpoint or a building lifespan standpoint?
Sure. So there are no risks. So one thing I wanted to make 100% clear is that if we don't do this, we are absolutely ventilating the building the way we're supposed to. The only thing we're doing here is reducing the amount of air we bring into the building, and it's strictly for an energy conservation measure. So there is no risk in terms of, I don't want people to be nervous that if we don't do this, a certain person in their office isn't going to get the right type of ventilation. No matter what they're getting it, the real benefit of this really just comes down to saving energy.
Okay, thank you. Justine, I see your hand up.
Yes, I had a question. If it seems like a pretty complicated system, and say if nobody was in the training room and it wasn't going to be used that day, can you just turn it off?
It's a little bit more complicated than that, because again, once you start changing airflow in one room, it really has an impact on the entire building. So I completely understood where you're coming from, Justine, that if you can identify maybe even just a couple rooms, let's say we don't necessarily want to do it in the whole building, but we really want to be able to identify the training room, because that's a very good example of a room that can get used very infrequently. We could potentially identify a solution to handle just the training room. But once you start getting into more than one room, it becomes very complicated. I wouldn't be able to do it for just a couple rooms or 3 or 4 or 5 rooms. It's kind of an all or nothing deal. But I do think we could probably identify a solution specific to the training room to be able to say, because I mean, maybe you guys tell me what the frequency of operation is of that room, but as I generally understand it, it's pretty infrequent. So we might be able to identify something independent of this system that could allow us to control ventilation to the training room independently of the rest of the building.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Donna, I saw your hand up earlier. Now I don't see it. Do you have a question?
I do.
Okay.
I can't figure my hand raising. Sorry. So I'm trying to understand the ventilation and air exchanges. And my questions would relate to not compromising the air exchange in rooms. A classic example, of course, is COVID. It's flu season. It's also the people that you tend to arrest oftentimes have communicable diseases. So I want to be sure that you have a high standard of air exchange going on for the protection of the people in the building.
It's a very good point. A couple clarifications on that is we have a unit that is dedicated to the cell block area. That unit would not integrate this system strictly because you're dealing with, you're dealing with very small confined spaces that are highly regulated for airflow by the Department of Health, as well as the mechanical code. So we have a unit that's specific to the cell block area to be able to treat exactly what you're speaking to, and that wouldn't change no matter what.
And would that include the booking area or any other area where prisoners would go?
Yes, correct. That includes
Thank
that
you.
whole area. To your other
Thanks.
point, though, as far as let's say, for instance, obviously COVID is at the top of everybody's mind, so reducing airflow isn't something certain people probably want to hear. I will say you do have some flexibility with this, so you can control it. So if we implemented demand controlled ventilation and we reduced ventilation within the building when the occupancy was low, but maybe we have a really bad flu season again, or maybe we have, God forbid, what could happen again. We can override it and basically set everything back to 100% so that we're, getting great volume of air throughout the building, even at a time period in the middle of the night where there might only be a few people in the building, for the sake of keeping that air clean, keep the building clean. It could be overridden to give you 100% back to 100%. So there's flexibility there.
But would that be something that whoever would be operating that would have presence of mind to make sure that was happening?
It really depends on who's operating it and what the condition is. So if it's a major condition like COVID, obviously it's a forefront of everybody's minds. I think it would be something that would be pretty easy to think about and say, hey, we need to turn up our ventilation system. If it's a smaller event where we're just concerned because there seems to be a bunch of people in the office that got flu this year, I'm not sure.
Well, it could save us money in the long run in absenteeism, right?
Yeah, those are all hard things to incorporate, obviously, but sure.
It's hard to put a number on it because you're predicting and juggling, but I'm not sure that people would have the presence of mind to make sure that they adjusted their air exchanges.
Agreed.
But Chief, that's something that you could keep in mind with whatever's happening with health along the way, because it will change. I mean, just think if one person came in with TB that you arrested. And I mean, it's common in homeless people, it's common in drug addicts. So you would want to have the confidence that the air exchange was there, for example, to bring down the risk of the officer getting TB, because you don't know they have it.
Sure. Well, I agree.
Mo, I see your hand up.
Yeah, but a couple more general questions related to this. What's the timeline to make a decision on this?
Well, it's fairly short, unfortunately, just given the schedule of events. It does have a lot of impacts on our HVAC design, so we can't proceed too much more until we know one way or another. So, unfortunately, there's not a tremendous amount of time here. Yeah.
Okay. And are there any more? I know things might come up, but I know we have the one other alternate, but besides that, I mean, are we confident that we're not going to have any other alternates come up?
I can address that. I think these were alternates that we put into the estimate because we didn't have time, because they came up as we were submitting our documents to the estimator. So we wrote narratives so that we can get a sense of what these systems would cost in addition to what we were designing the building to. So these were sort of late in the game decisions that came to the table, and we wanted to make sure that we were well informed on the value of what these would be. In terms of bid alternates, we have not yet defined bid alternates that would actually be part of the subcontractor sub-trade bids. we would be looking over the next month or two to start to package some of those together if we see fit. So the idea that this being part of the project now or as an alternate is not necessarily off the table. I don't know how hard it is to break this out, but because of the current situation that we're in, with the uncertainty in the market, it does make sense for us to start to identify some alternates. And I think that's a conversation that the CM in Tecton, as well as the town, can have sort of offline over the next couple of weeks to see what we think would make sense.
Okay, so maybe I misunderstood. This is what you're talking about is us voting on putting this into the package now, not as an alternate?
Correct.
Okay, well, because what I was concerned about is if the order that these things would go in, but if we're talking about either putting it in or not, I guess that really answers my question.
I mean, to that, Brad, how hard is it to separate this piece of the system as an alternate?
Pretty difficult because it impacts our
multiple trades involved.
Yeah, it wouldn't be something that I would recommend doing as an alternate. It'd be difficult to document.
Yeah, so to your point, Mo, this would be a vote to include this into the project, the hard bid.
Okay. Anything else, Mo? Okay. Brad, I guess my last question is, let's say we decided, for instance, we decided not to move forward at this time, but let's say in 10 years or so, all the ventilation standards changed and it became required. How hard would it be to retrofit something like this in?
I mean, it's a substantial project, don't get me wrong. You wouldn't be replacing the entire HVAC system. It would be a modification to the existing system that's in place, and that could be done. It would still be, you still have to take down ceiling tiles and get above the ceiling and cut in some different ductwork here and there to make some modifications, that sort of thing. So it's not something you're going to do in a weekend, but it's also you're also not tearing out the whole thing and starting over. So I don't know if that helps answer your question, but
no. So it's something that's doable then.
It's doable. Yep.
Okay. All right. Very good. Anything else? All right, Matt. What else do you have for us?
All right.
Thanks, Brad.
Thanks.
So next, we're gonna touch on the updated stormwater management plans and site plans. So just as a recap, we did our geotechnical borings last year, and they identified a certain amount of groundwater at a certain depth, and then we dug our test pits last month, and they told us a different story of a more consistent shallow profile. So in order to maintain our schedule and get early site packages released and keep everything moving forward, we prepared a quick conceptual stormwater management plan that was presented to the Conservation Commission a few weeks ago. Those were really just to show that we could go from an all underground detention basin system to an above ground system. We recognized that they were not an ideal configuration aesthetically and with the site. So we've gone back and we've looked at that and tried to develop a cohesive site plan that incorporates some better stormwater management practices throughout the site that would both be aesthetically pleasing and more attractive solution. And we also looked for some educational opportunities in conjunction with that, with some of these systems too, with signage and the like. And so we'd like to show you what we've come up with, and the hope is that we would get your stamp of approval that we could proceed with these for the Conservation Commission hearing coming up a week from tomorrow. So with that, I have Fuss and O'Neill on, and I think they can present this. I'll just go through these. So just as a reminder, this was where we were with the design development package that went to the estimator. Again, showing substantially that the system would be underground detention that would be below the parking and would infiltrate the stormwater into the ground. That would not be practical based on the water table that we have. And then this was the proof of concept that we presented to the Conservation Commission last month that moved everything to above ground and showing the basins here in the front. And of course, that is not the preferred method. So we went back to revise this and come up with a solution that was better. Victoria or Dan, this is the latest. Victoria?
Victoria's on mute.
I don't know if you guys, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
You can? Okay. Do you mind if I share my screen just so I can talk some of them?
Sure.
Okay. Okay. Just to sort of highlight some of them, stormwater management is will be tricky on this site due to the high groundwater elevations from not only the peak flow attenuation of not increasing flows off the site in post construction, but also in being able to provide adequate water quality treatment, which is why there is still the need for, or there is the need for the above ground and sort of underground. So as Matt had showed on his plan, there are 4 sort of above ground areas which are help us meet both the water quality standards and the peak runoff rates. There are some of these boxes here which will look similar to what you saw on the very first set of plans, in that they're in the same general locations as the underground infiltration areas. Although in this instance, they are needed for the volume standpoint, and it will be a closed pipe system. So before it was chambers where water would be stored and then could infiltrate into the soils beneath. Now they're closed pipes that will be underground, but provide storage under the pavement for stormwater, so that overall this site can attenuate sort of the post-construction flows as well as the water quality. And then we have been talking about, in terms of landscaping and the rain garden education pieces, is that this basin right here and this one as well would be ideal locations for where educational signage could be placed and related to the rain gardens, so that visitors to the site can see those. And in all of these areas, or I would like to say there would be no mulch proposed in any of these areas. They would be sort of like a mix between like low maintenance plants, but also trying to spice in some color. So with that, I can stop presenting and let Matt take back the PowerPoint if you'd like.
Yeah, I'll share my screen again, and I have some images of what these things are going to look like, so that they're not. I think the perception looking at them on the plan is that these are pits filled with dirt and debris, and these are certainly not that. So these are just some images of what these things can look like. And Victoria, if you want to just describe the depths of some of these, they're a lot more shallow than they look on the plan.
Correct. So I believe most of the basins that we have proposed have between 1.5 feet. They're pretty low in terms of volume storage before water is able to sort of exit the system. So while you may see from the contours that it looks like it's a 4-foot deep depression, there would be an outlet pipe that would be placed anywhere between 1.5 to 2 feet above the bottom of the basin. That way it will, once it gets to that level, it may fill up more, but it will be discharging at the same time. There design, the plantings are selected such that they are able to be, submerged underwater for these types of periods of time. But also we're trying to find a balance where they don't need to be maintained as much, but they won't become very overgrown and unruly either.
Any questions, comments?
I have one question. On the,
Sure, go ahead, John.
now that we've increased the parking area with pavement, how much more volume are we introducing into the storm system? Is there a guess?
From which pavement area?
All the parking area that we've got, now you're introducing with the drain systems, not so much the rain gardens, but the parking areas themselves.
Yeah.
Where's that water going?
I don't have the exact numbers from that. So we have accounted for the sort of existing impervious. So even in the existing area that's paved, because we're repaving it, it would still be subject to sort of the water quality treatment volumes, just where you treat 0.8 of an inch of water for that area. And in the new area, you would treat the 1 inch. I know from the water quality volume standpoint, we need to, where you take the 0.8 inches for existing impervious and then you add 1 inch for new impervious, those two things combined require about 12,750 cubic feet of storage to meet the town's stormwater management bylaw in terms of water quality volume.
Thank you.
Victoria. I don't think you mentioned that you had that underground pipe storage system as well. That's where a lot of that water goes.
So that is, and forgive me because those are more in like the technical reports. So the volume that I just quoted is to treat water quality volume. So attenuating flows for different things, and you do it for multiple design year storms. So you'd have to forgive me that I don't have a printout for that. We had planned on trying to get an idea of making sure that these areas were okay with you, but I can definitely get you that, get you that number, just not right at this moment.
Victoria, the goal of those underground systems is to provide a significant enough volume so that as that's released, you don't impact any of the downstream stormwater systems or release anything more to the wetlands than what's already going there. So the sizing is shown in a manner so that we maintain those flows and those volumes so that you don't increase and overwhelm the downstream system.
Mo, you have a question?
Yes, Pat, thanks. I don't know who to ask, so I'll direct it to Matt. Matt, the plan that was presented to conservation, I know it was just to show that the water issue could be addressed. But is that handling this? It is handling the same volumes as what this plan is showing right now. Is it built to the same standards for the same amount of water?
Yes.
I believe so.
Correct.
Yes,
yeah,
it is.
They both, yes, the basins on the other one were deeper.
Is that why it looks like there's less here than what was on that conservation one?
Correct.
Okay, but all right, the other ones were deeper, but this looks like there's less overall than what was on that other plan.
Well, there was a reduction in the underground infiltration in that plan at the time. This maintains underground storage in the form of closed pipes, so you can have that in closer proximity to groundwater than you can the very first system that we showed. The second system the second plan, the one that went to conservation last time, relied almost entirely on the above ground, and now this is sort of a hybrid of the two, where we are getting as much underground as we can. So we minimize the footprint, but we need the above ground that's shown in green in order to meet those groundwater recharge volumes.
Okay. One other question.
And the height of the building also changed in the two, so you'll see some grading, and so that's a little bit why some of the areas may look similar, but the height of the building was raised, which also will help with the arsenic soil.
So, okay. The land to the left, as we're looking at this picture, to the left of the police parking lot, was that looked at to see if we could use that to minimize some of the stuff around the building, closer to the building and out? I'm moving my pen like you could see it. Behind where the monument is, like that one, is there any opportunity to move that stuff to the left so we're not dealing with that right in the middle of the complex, or is that not possible?
So we did actually look at that area, and you may see sort of a phantom ghost line on the revised LA plan that will show that we did look at it in that location. It was opted to go toward sort of the front to preserve the area that would be going towards the field, but certainly that is an area we could look at again.
And I think some of it, Victoria, too, is the overall elevation on the site is so flat. In order to treat the water associated with the parking lot on the right-hand side on this picture, that was the purpose for some of those keeping the smaller basin that's tucked in between the sidewalk and the roadway. So, even if we were to expand to the left, I think we still would need something in that center area in order to treat the water coming from that particular parking lot.
Okay. I think that just answered my question. Thank you.
John, I see your hand up.
I'm sorry, I made it by mistake. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm good. They answered my questions. Thank you.
All right, very good. So I keep looking at these rain gardens and I keep having the same questions. And that's number one, the startup cost versus not doing rain gardens. And then the ongoing cost, especially from a maintenance standpoint, not only in terms of cost, but in terms of the pressure it puts on public buildings and grounds to maintain those.
I mean, there is maintenance associated with them. Once they're established, they tend to be similar to, any other landscaped area. They'll be planted with shrubs and other types of plants. So it would be similar to any other densely vegetated, landscaped area. The added piece of it is that you will need to monitor any of the outlet structures for debris or anything like that might clog them. Your Dunkin' Donuts cups and things like that and whatnot. But the maintenance, some of the ones in the pictures, some of these are very are much more urbanized, so they have a lot more of a hardscape treatment, where it may be something similar. This picture kind of shows a more a less hardscape treatment. So there is maintenance of the plantings once when they're planted, and then once they get established, a lot of those shrubs are only cut back, I believe, once a year in that area, in that realm. So your landscape contractor, or if you do it with in-house forces, wouldn't have to. It's not something that'd have to be in there every week or every 2 weeks, like you would with a mowed area.
Yeah,
but there is some work associated with it.
Yeah, I come from a public works and parks and service budget kind of background, and so we are working with the Shrewsbury Department of Public Works to sort of pick plantings that, from a schedule standpoint, will not require that high level, will not become unruly, where you kind of get that same comparison of, how come that's not maintained and something else is. So we are kind of being very selective in sort of what we want to propose and get that stuff reviewed with them so that it works with the ongoing budget in the future.
Oh, all right. And back to my question about, the initial startup cost versus what are the alternatives to a rain garden in terms of an above ground system?
I think you're pretty limited in this scenario, Patrick, because of the town has requirements both, and the state has the groundwater recharge and the treatment. And then in addition, the town also has the requirement to reduce phosphorus because of the TMDLs in the area. So in order to do that, you do need some form of a vegetated system that provides infiltration. The other option would be underground infiltration, which we had hoped to incorporate, but given the level of the groundwater, it was not an option on this particular site. So it would be some form or fashion of this type of treatment. It would have to be above ground, and it would have to involve vegetation. We had talked at a previous meeting, I can't remember which group it was, about using some other types of plantings, wildflower, meadow mixes. They have different, seed mixes for this, but the preference was, especially on those front two rain gardens, that the more they look like part of the landscape, which would be the intent, the more apt they are to be maintained regularly and not really need a ton of maintenance, because they wouldn't fall into disrepair. And we've done a number of these in urbanized areas or semi-urban areas where the closer they are and the more they're viewed as part of the landscape, the much better off they are in terms of long-term maintenance and how they fare in the community. If you use the old approach, which is to build a big old basin in the back of the property that nobody ever sees or goes to, those are usually the ones that get overgrown and fail and cost you money in the long run. So there is a cost associated with them, and there aren't too many options here, but the main options we can look at are really how we plant them, and I know that we've been talking to DPW about that and to engineering.
Okay, as long as we're cognizant of that, and that's it's at the top of everybody's mind, then that makes me feel better. Okay, Bo, you have another question?
Yeah, Ian, could you go back to that picture you had with the large, nice-looking rain garden? Thank you. I thought I heard Victoria say there was no mulch in these things. Is that correct?
Typically, you don't want to put mulch in them, though.
So that's
we are not proposing mulch,
right.
But in the example photos, yes, you
there's some that have
see
them,
some that have mulch.
Okay, but so I'm guessing this is kind of a coarse soil, so the water would filter through it. Is that right?
Yeah, the bottom of the basins have a specific soil media. It's about, I think, Victoria, ours is 2 feet thick in this particular example or in this detail, but it's a specific planting media that has the media is specifically to filter the water as it goes through.
So I get to my question is, I'm seeing a lot of open ground there. And being somebody who hates weeds, I'm seeing like a weed nightmare there. I mean, how do you stop the other stuff from growing in, or do you care?
Well, this particular one, this has quite a bit of open space. What we would prefer to do is to get initial density with whether it's shrubs or some of the plugs that we would put in, and then the grass would, the grass, especially in those front two areas, would go up right up to the edge of it, and we, have grass along the slopes because it would be part of that maintained lawn area or right adjacent to the maintained lawn area.
But
it's something until it fully grows in. This will eventually grow in, so you won't see the soil media. The eventual grow in would be that you don't see the soil media and that it's only acting below the roots of the plants. So eventually you would want to see everything kind of grow in.
Keith, I don't see you pulling your hair out. I mean, I know we might not have options, but you're aware of what the implications are. Not that we have options, but maintenance wise.
Yes, and like Dan said, I mean, working with the design team on the plantings is key, and like I said, it's going to eventually all grow in. And yes, we will have maintenance, but I don't think it'll be any more maintenance than it would if we had a detention pond, which we're supposed to maintain now too. So we're totally aware of it, and they seem to have some good planting ideas. So, that's
so Keith, you're comfortable with this design and this plan?
Yes, for sure. And Angela has been part of it too. And so she's aware of it also.
All right, very good. Anything else from anybody? Okay, Matt, what else you got?
So just a couple quick slides here, just showing that, you know, we would look to put some signage here to make these an education opportunity to the community. And the last piece is just to talk about the landscape development at the plaza, taking that just a little bit further from the last time you guys had seen it. This is just a rendered site plan of the front entry area here. One thing that we had been talking about with this sort of new design where we're sort of terracing down into the plaza area, making this more of a cohesive landscape, is the maintainability of these sort of beds here. It's kind of difficult to get a lawnmower in there. So we would propose something that's sort of maintenance free, or it's a once a year maintenance item. Infilling this with some taller plantings, some shrubs, and then going with sort of a no-mow grass that you mow once a year, or like a pachysandra, something that would fill in here. And then adding in these making sure that these planters and these bollard lines are well defined. Anybody watched the news over the past week, we know how important that this sort of mitigation strategy is for the front entry of a police station. So this is readily apparent right now. And then we also have some renderings showing what this looks like in 3D, and that I guess there was a request to look at putting a screen or fencing here to screen off visually the prisoner release area from the plaza below. So this is an aerial view of this. This is without the screen here, just creating a hedgerow that sort of creates a buffer between this pathway and the plaza itself. This being our proposed memorial area, and right now we're also showing this as one of the locations for the flagpole, with the other one over here. We're showing it that way because we like vertical anchorage of the corners of the building, and we think it sort of builds up a nice composition. But if we want to have the flagpoles more clustered, you know, we can put them both over here or bring them closer to the building. We're okay with it either way. But you can see how we're sort of gradually stepping down into the plaza now, instead of sort of a site cast concrete staircase, and that the ramp flows down nicely. So this is a little bit more of a cohesive flow. And here it is again with with what we could propose for a fencing. This is just sort of a wood slatted fence, something a little more attractive than a picket, something a little nicer here, a little more modern. So this is one thought. A little bit different view. This is down from the memorial looking into the plaza. Again, that low or maintenance-free landscaping in these terraces here, and then some low maintenance plantings along these planter walls here, just to sort of define the space a little bit more and enliven it up a bit. And from inside the plaza looking back up towards Town Hall. So this is what it would look like as you come out of the training room. And again, with the fencing added in, if we choose to have that in. So right now the hedgerow would provide some screening. The sidewalk line is really down here. But if we wanted additional screening, we could add in that fence to achieve it.
Okay.
And these are what we were thinking for that low maintenance landscaping in those tucked away plazas there in front of the training room and in the clerk's office. So this is that no mow grass. You just cut this down sort of at the end of the planting season in the fall, or you know, we all know what pachysandra looks like. So there's some pachysandra there as an option, and we can explore other things as well, and we can vary it up a bit and have a combination of the two. That's it. That's all I got.
Okay, Matt, can you do me a favor? Can you go back to that first 3D rendering? I just have a question. I may go back to the rain gardens a little bit. So I'm going to point to the screen too, like you can all see it. But you know all the protection areas in front, the balusters or whatever you call them, the four concrete boxes in front there.
Yep.
Those are not the rain gardens, are they?
No, they are not.
Could they be?
So these are elevated, so they wouldn't quite work like that. These are not only to, one, reduce the scale of the building visually from the street and provide some visual interest in seating walls and things like that. This is also there to prevent vehicles from impacting the building.
Right, I understand that. I didn't know if it was a way of kind of if there was a way to integrate those in where they could be multifunctional.
You know, Patrick, we did something similar to that in Pittsfield along North Street. The issue here is that the way the grading is, we're obviously grading away from the building, so we don't have much of a way to get any water up there that needs to be treated. The requirements are to treat the runoff from the parking lot or where there's vehicles. So it's a cool idea, and we have done it. You know, there we had the ability to do it because the way we just picked off the gutter flow on a street, and we're able to do it up there in Pittsfield, and it worked out really well. It did look actually quite similar to this. It was pretty cool, but just looking at the grading while you're talking, I don't think we can make it work here, but it's a cool idea.
Okay, just thought I'd ask. That's all. All right.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yeah. Keith.
I just had one comment, and I think Matt and your landscape design, I think we should look at that grass in the front. This place will have a full-time custodian, so we will have somebody available for maintenance. My experience with no-mow grass is it turns brown. I would rather see something that's a drought-tolerant grass that keeps the front of the building look nice. I think there's areas on the property we could do the no-mow style fescue, but I don't think that's it. I think we want the front of that building to. But I think we can work with, especially the way that you did the step down. I think we can manage to maintain that with a mower.
Okay. Yeah, no problem.
Pat, Chief Anderson here.
Thanks. Yes, Chief. Go ahead, please.
I agree with Keith. On another note, Matt, I can't tell those plantings. How tall are those? They look small, but it might just be from the angle.
These?
Those boxes in front of the station.
So this being at like a sitting wall, this is like 18 inches. and then the plantings would probably be another, 18 inches, 2 feet above that, depending on what we specify. We haven't necessarily picked anything yet.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, is that something that's tall enough to stop a car? Or is it going to act almost like a ramp? Because they got a pretty good running start there if someone, God forbid, wanted to breach the building.
Yeah, it should be. If we want to raise it up, we can certainly raise it up a little higher. We can also do some steps and things like that. So there's solutions that we can accommodate.
There's a raised curb along the front of the building as well, right?
Yes, granite curb.
Just a thought. I don't know what the plantings are going to be, but could it be possible to keep it like that and then put a couple of those poles on the inside? That would be, you wouldn't be able to see it if you had some tall grass or some plantings.
Sure.
Well, extra protection.
Yeah.
I think that's a good
point.
We
like to get these.
Yeah.
We like to get these so an SUV is going to get hung up on it. Obviously, if somebody comes with one of these monster trucks, it's a different game altogether. But normally, we're trying to get most vehicles hung up on the planter.
The thing that we tend to see too is what you saw over the weekend, Chief, and that the bullseye is going to be the front door.
Yep. Yeah, but what I'm thinking, Matt, is where those windows are on the right side of the building, they're low. So if that car can breach that area, it can actually go right into the building.
Right. And especially on the right-hand side of that building, where they could have a running start from the drive. They could build up a lot more speed than, say, on the front door.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll look at the design of it and we'll make it a little bit more robust, Chief.
Okay, because what happened in Leicester, thank God he didn't have as much of a run time, I guess you'd call it. But right there, as Pat said, there's a long distance right in the front to the other side of the town hall.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, anything else around the design? Okay, thanks, Matt. That brings us to a report from the construction manager.
Good evening, everybody. Keep it brief, like Neil. We've been working with Fontaine, or with Tecton and CMS, just developing all of our early bid packages, coordinating our logistics, getting schedules finalized. Everything still looks really good. We're keeping an eye on all the material and all the craziness going on in the world to make sure that doesn't have any effect or delay on us. So everything's looking good. And we're looking forward to getting these plans out on the street to start early packages shortly. So that's all I have for tonight.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. Any questions for Ryan? Okay, very good. So next, we got several things to review and act on based on the conversations that we just had and from previous meetings. But item number 5 is review and act on the amendment for lead certification additional services. So we've all seen the numbers on that. I did have one question on that. And that is, okay, so let's say we proceed and we get certified. Is there a recertification over time? Is this something needs to be recertified every 5 years, 10 years, or is it a one and done deal?
No, well, it's one and done.
One and done. Okay. That answers that question. Thank you. So what are the feelings out there on? Yes, Kristen.
Pat, to be fair, I think Tecton makes it sound simple that it's a one and done, but it's going to be a few renditions back and forth with lead, and it is definitely a challenging process, which is why their fee is the way it is. It's not simple by any stretch of the imagination.
No, I understand that, but it's not like, say, accreditation where you have to go for that every 3 to 5 years. I guess that was my question.
Get the plaque, once you get the plaque, it goes on your wall, and you never have to go back again.
Okay, thank you. Kristen, you had something?
Sure. I'm just wondering if Neil could give us an overview of where he feels that we would be budgetary wise on the project for all 3 ad alternates that we're discussing this evening, just so the committee has a full understanding. I think we're looking at 3 additions right now. So Neil, are you prepared just to give us a general overview of where you feel that we would stand budgetarily if we accepted all 3? And then where you feel we are moving in the direction of budget overall. I just want to make sure that the committee is fully aware before they make their decision this evening.
Kristen, I think they're being addressed early enough in the design process that we would be able to accommodate them budget-wise. Of course, we probably have to lean a little heavier on Fontaine to pull all the finances together, but based on the 75% DD estimate, they could be supported financially.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions? Thanks, Neil. I appreciate that. It's good to know that we would stay within budget. So I'd like to take these one at a time. So we've got item number 5, the lead certification additional services. Any comments? Mo, I see your hand up.
Yeah, Pat. I thought a lot about this, and I talked to a couple other members of my board just to get their sense of what they thought about it. We're doing the work that'll get us the way we're building the building. We could get the LEED certification if we do all this other paperwork, right? Basically. So on the one hand, as a practical matter, we don't need this, but I think that to demonstrate to the community and reinforce what we've been doing for the past 5 or 8 years and trying to address the energy issues in town, that my recommendation is that we go for the certification process. I think it's more of a public relations thing at this point because we're building the building that way anyways. But I think it's important to convey to people that we are cognizant of the issue, and I think this would help.
Thanks, Mo. Any other thoughts out there? Joe?
Yeah, just so I understand this, we're voting on this particular separate from the other two items, which add alternates, or is this going to be
That is
included as
correct.
another? Okay.
Justine, I saw your hand up. Do you have something?
Yes, I am kind of in favor of the certification as well. For a number of reasons, I agree with Mo that it is good for public relations, but to have the air, I want our officers in good shape and not weary and not being exposed to like dangerous situations. And we're at an opportunity right now where we can do it. We can incorporate it. And I think it's a smart thing to do. It's just my opinion on that.
Okay, thanks, Justine. Anybody else out there?
Are we commenting on each thing individually or just?
Yeah, I think we're talking about a lot of money here. They're each separate and distinct items. And I'd like to discuss each one separately and then take a vote on that particular item.
Okay.
All right.
All right. So vote on lead.
Just my thoughts. I tend to agree with Mo. I think it's important from a community standpoint. We are leaning in that direction. We've been doing a lot of these types of things. We are building it to that standard right now anyway. And so I think it's good to go forward with the certification process. I know there have been other buildings that have been built to that standard and they have not gone for certification. And I think it would be good to promote the police building to the community as a LEED certified building. And if you look at just this one particular item at $85,000, it's a one-time expense with no ongoing maintenance, any other additional costs going forward. It accounts for 0.2% of the total budget. So based on that, I think it's a smart move and a wise decision to move forward on that. But that will be up to the pleasure of the committee based on their vote. Anything else? Anybody else? Quiet out there. All right. Based on no further discussion, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move the board vote to include the LEED certification in the construction package.
We have a motion to include the LEED certification additional service in the construction package. Do we have a second?
Could I just offer that we amend that motion slightly and authorize the town manager to sign the contract with Tecton?
Sure. So amended.
Second with the amendment.
Very good. Thank you, John. So we have a motion and a second to approve the amendment for LEED certification for the additional service for the construction project and give authorization to the town manager to sign the documents necessary to make that happen. Did I capture that correctly, Kristen? Very good.
All set.
All those in favor? Mo?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
Chief?
Aye.
Heath?
Aye.
Justine?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
And Donna?
Aye.
Unanimous. And myself, aye. So let's record that as 9-0. Thank you, everybody. I think that's money well spent. All right, which brings us to item 6. Review and act on to approve the proposed stormwater mitigation plan. Any other discussion around that? No, I think we covered that pretty thoroughly.
Yeah.
Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the stormwater mitigation plan as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second that.
Thank you, Chief. So we have a motion and a second to approve the proposed stormwater mitigation plan and use that plan going forward. So when all those in favor, Mo?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
Chief?
Aye.
Keith?
Aye.
Justine?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Donna?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Again, recorded as unanimous, 9-0. Thank you, everybody. Which brings us to item 7, review and act on alternates carried in the design development estimate. So that would be, I lost my train of thought here. What are we talking about here? All right. Do we have any further discussion on that, on any of the design development changes?
Is that on the ear? The HVAC?
That would be on the air, yes.
I think there's 2 items, correct? Neil, can you, or Matt, can you
I
correct
thought it
us?
was just
The two items are the changes to the air system and a minor change to the fire suppression system that I believe we had indicated we were going to previously move forward with.
But we've not acted on that. All right, so should we take
So the
those
fire,
separately?
the fire is 45,000, and then the monitoring system is $250,000, just for frame of reference.
Okay, I just want a little clarification if I could. You know, talking about what was presented by Brad this evening to spend the extra money for the HVAC.
Yes,
correct.
that's one of them, Chief. And the second one was the extending the pre-action system into the communications closet, I believe.
To the evidence storage.
I'm sorry, evidence storage. Thank you, Jeff.
So, yeah, so why don't we take these as separate items? So we have the fire system first. I think we've kind of talked about that at previous meetings. Are there any different thoughts on that?
Just one quick thing, Pat. Just a clarification again, probably from Neil. When we're doing the alternates, these are things, I think you talked about it before, Neil, that are ranked. So you take number 1 first, number 2 second in the bid process. So the way we have it, or the way it's listed right now, is the fire suppression is number 1, the HVAC is number 2. Is that correct? Is that how it's working?
It's my understanding that we're voting tonight that these would be incorporated into the scope of the project. They would not be alternates as we move forward.
Right. So we're moving them from alternates to part of the plan.
Okay, that's where my confusion was in the beginning here. I thought these were going to go as bid alternates, and that's why I was a little concerned about that going forward. But
sure, no,
you answered my question. No.
All right, good. Any discussion around the fire suppression system?
Pat, are we taking each one of these votes separately?
I think I would like to, because they're different costs and they're completely different systems. You know, there may be people out there in favor of one and not the other.
Yeah.
So I think to take them as separate items makes sense.
Well, let me know when you want a motion.
If everybody's good to talking about the fire system suppression, I am good taking a motion on that.
I move we approve, subject to anything Kristen tells us we have to add.
So we're adding in the alternate fire suppression system into the design plan. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to move the fire suppression system for the evidence room from an alternate to the construction budget. Does that sum it up, Kristen?
I believe that's correct. To let Neil correct me if I'm not.
No, that's fine.
Okay, very good. So with that, all those in favor, Mo,
Aye.
Kristen,
Aye.
Chief,
Aye.
Keith,
Aye.
Justine,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Donna,
Aye.
and myself, aye. Thank you, everybody, 9-0. And so now we have the air system alternate up for discussion. Thoughts out there? I mean, I know it was presented to us today. It sounds like it's something that we need to act on fairly quickly. So what's everybody's feeling out there?
Pat, Chief Anderson.
Chief.
Go ahead, Mo.
No, go ahead, Chief. I can wait.
Yeah, I'm for it. I think more comfortable building is better. And I was at the Lexington Fire headquarters, and it was a noticeable feeling within the building. It was very comfortable. That's my take on it. Okay. We are in here 24 hours a day, so if it wasn't a 24-hour-a-day building, I would say no. But we are in here 24 hours a day.
Okay. Mo, I saw your hand up.
Yeah. Pat, I guess I have too much of the Connie Magato influence in me. You know, I've had it beaten into my head with nice to haves and need to haves, and I'm sorry, I'm just not convinced that it's a need to have, and it's a big number. And my experience in office buildings is nobody's ever happy anyways, with the air with the air temperatures. So but seriously, I just I don't think we need to have it, and you know, my opinion is we should pass on it.
Thanks, Mo. Donna, I see your hand up.
I say do it right the first time. And if you have to work in a building that's open 24 hours a day with all that's happening and what's happening in the world today, I'd say do it right the first time. So I'm in favor of it.
Okay, thanks, Donna. Any other thoughts out there?
Mr. Pippin, if I may.
Who have we got? Matt.
Just a quick question. Brad, if you're still there, is this contributing to one of our lead points? I don't recall.
Indirectly, Matt, because it will have an impact on the energy performance, but that would be it.
But it's not a direct thing, so we can make it
not a direct thing, but it might get us an extra point in the energy category.
But my understanding, Brad, was that it would not get in the way if we decided not to do it of getting LEED certification.
Correct. If we did not do this, we would still maintain LEED certification.
Okay, very good. Joe? You got
Yeah, that was going to be my question, whether that was going to contribute to the LEED certification, but if it doesn't make a difference, that's fine. The other thing, too, is from my perspective, if it fits within the existing budget now without going into the contingency, again, I would agree with Donna. I think if you're going to do it right the first time. We don't have to go back in 5 or 10 years and put the system in and you know, make a workaround later on, and it's going to cost more money and it's going to mess with the system. If we're going to do it, we might as well do it right now.
Okay. Thanks, Joe. Anybody else? Donna, I see is your hand still up? Did you not put it down, or do you have something else? Okay. All right. From my perspective, and maybe I go back to my finance committee and town meeting days, the first two questions are, do we need it, number one, and number two, can we afford it? I guess the question to number one is, do we need it? The simple answer is no, we don't need it. I think what Mo said, it's a nice to have. It's not a have to have. I think without it, it's still going to be a very comfortable building. And if it's something that, you know, had to be done in 10, 20 years, it could be done. But I think at this time, it's a big number, and I think that money could be put to better use in other places. So again, it's that's my feeling on it. It's certainly going to be at the discretion of the committee, but that's my feeling at this point. Anybody else? There being none, do we have a motion?
I move we approve the added 250,000 for the HVAC.
Well, actually, I think I don't think we have a final number on it, Donna. If you could just
The approximate 200, whatever.
I think it was
is.
around 255 was the one we got, but if you could just phrase it without a number.
So I move that we add the HVAC system to the high appropriate level.
I second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to move the enhanced HVAC system from an additional service to the construction phase. Did I capture that correctly, Kristen?
Yeah, no, I just had the minutes reflect is the demand control ventilation system.
The demand control ventilation system. Thank you. All right. All those in favor?
Pat, just a quick clarification before.
Sure.
I don't want to muddle the water, but probably a question for Neil. If we did this as an add alternate, we would not have to vote tonight to accept it, or how would that work in the bid, Neil? Would it be something we would later on accept if we did it as an add alternate instead of going into the budget?
If it were an add alternate, you would not have to make that determination until we voted on the guaranteed maximum price with the CM. I do want to just remind the committee that I think that question was already asked, and Brad offered that it would be a very difficult add alternate because of all of the moving parts and intricacies associated with making this work. I think the expression Brad used was, we're either all in or all out.
I don't know if it was exact, but essentially what I said, it was to be very difficult to incorporate as an add alternate. So yes, Neil, to your point, it's something that's not difficult to incorporate into the design necessarily, but difficult to try to bid in multiple different ways.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Good question, Joe. Anything else before we bring it to a vote? Okay. All those in favor? Mo?
Hold, there's one more comment, I believe.
What have we got? I don't see a hand up. Donna? Is that you?
All I was going to say was, if it's that complicated to put in as an add alternate, how do you suppose it would be 10 years from now putting it in? That's all.
Duly noted, Donna. Okay. All those in favor? Mo?
No.
Kristen?
Yes.
Chief?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Justine?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
And myself, I am a no on this. So let the record show that the motion passes 7-2. Thank you, everybody. Good discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And that brings us to item 8, discuss the groundbreaking ceremony. Groundbreaking is new to me. I'm not sure what's involved with all of that. Kristen, maybe you can shed some light for us?
Sure. So traditionally, on town building projects, we've had several ceremonies at the site related to certain building projects. And I feel that it's pertinent to start talking about the groundbreaking ceremony We may also be having, and the construction team can probably correct me, there's also usually a beam topping off ceremony and then an opening ceremony for the building. So I just wanted to get a sense from the construction team of when they thought an appropriate time frame from this was, and then the town manager's office and the construction team can work on the groundbreaking ceremony details. Generally, it includes Board of Selectmen members, our state rep and state senator, and other officials, obviously the police force. This would certainly be in accordance with any COVID protocols that are required at the time. But just wanted to get this committee thinking of that. I don't see it as a heavy lift by the committee. Obviously, we would want your attendance if you're available, but we as staff and the construction team can certainly handle that. Just wanted to get a sense from the construction team of when they thought an appropriate time frame would be, and then we can handle it from there.
Yeah, so I personally, with the site obviously being a full like wooded area currently, I haven't seen a groundbreaking occur until we were prepared to start digging for subsurface, all your drainage and different site features. So we would probably want to look at doing a groundbreaking after the site was cleared and grubbed. So that would probably be around the first or second week of August. If it was something where we wanted to just take a couple of the trees down by the edge of Maple Ave and then do a groundbreaking ceremony pretty quickly, we'd be looking at the third or fourth week in July. We expect to start doing clearing the site around the end of July. So that's kind of the time frame we're looking in, third week of July to second week of August, depending when you guys want to do it. We have started seeing groundbreakings with, groups of people being COVID cognizant, obviously, but it is something that is coming back into a standard with projects now.
So Ryan, if I understand you, if we went the third or fourth week in July, that's when you're starting the site preparation type of.
Yeah, so we expect to start clearing the site. It's obviously all wooded, but if you want your more traditional, line of shovels, everybody takes the first shovelful, you'd probably want to do that around the first or second week of August. That's once the whole site will be cleared.
All right. I mean, I tend to be a traditionalist on most things. Not always, but on this, what's everybody's feeling on that?
I think we should wait till August, Pat. That's what we usually do.
Okay. Chief, how are you with that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. It doesn't matter to me either way, but most I've seen is more like the August type with all the shovels and things like that.
Okay. All right. Anybody think we should do it earlier?
I have a question. Ryan, or maybe Mo, you can answer this one. Is this more ceremonial, or is it bad luck if you do it like September 1st? I'm just concerned about vacations and stuff like that. And, state reps, I think they aren't around in August much.
My experience, I mean, it's ceremonial, but you don't want to do it when the steel's already up.
Sure.
So, we should be able to be flexible in August, Chief, if we have to move it around for your department's participation. Okay. I mean, I would think so, but leave it up to the rest of the committee. But
Chief, we want a picture of you putting that shovel in the ground.
Sounds good. I'm in.
All right, very good. And then the opening ceremony would be, obviously, when would that occur? That would not be, so how does that work, Kristen, or Mo, or
somebody? So I think Ryan can probably give us some target dates for the topping off and the opening, but we can obviously plan those further down the road.
Sure. I'm just curious as to what's involved with those.
Yeah, so topping off, we'll be looking at probably around Christmas time of this year. We're scheduled to have, or actually earlier, the beginning of December. But we'll probably really want to nail that down come September, October, once we have a better understanding of where we're at in the schedule. But I would imagine the first or second week of December is when we'll be targeting your topping off. And usually that's just, we'll traditionally paint the last beam to white, and everybody can come onto site and sign it before they hang it. And they usually attach a small Christmas tree to the top of it for good luck or something along those lines. There's an old story about that. And then your opening ceremony, that might be kind of dependent on what stage the project is. Obviously, we're tearing down the old police station in front of the new one. So we're looking at having the new police station operational, I believe, January of 2023. Yes. Our substantial completion for it is November of 22. So we'll have the old police station torn down by the spring of 2023. So I guess that's when you would want to do your formal opening ceremony once everything's all cleaned up around it.
Sure. Okay. So I think we have some time to plan that one out.
Yeah.
Just one thing on the topping off ceremony, and I'd like everybody's feeling on this. I know traditionally the last beam is signed by town officials, employees, things like that. Is there, since this is a public building and a community building, will there be an opportunity for citizens, if they so choose, to come and sign a beam? And how do we, or can we make that happen? How would we make that happen?
Yeah, I think we did that with the library. The public was allowed to sign.
Yeah. So if we had the last beam available for maybe, I don't know, 48 hours, a couple days before the plan.
I think we did all those signings that day, Pat, because they didn't want people walking all over the construction site.
No, that's fine. I didn't know if we'd have a designated spot.
It's usually a designated date and time and spot due to the construction staging. We want to make sure everybody's safe as well.
Yeah. But that's something, if we could incorporate that, I think that, and advertise it, I think that would be important from a community standpoint.
And Pat, another scheduling thing, by town tradition, we usually have them on a rainy or freezing day, the coldest day up at that point in the year. So, just be cognizant of that. You'll have to watch the Weather Channel.
I'll order up some thunderstorms just so we stick with tradition. How's that?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I just wanted to let people know that for the Beal topping off, and it might be even easier at this site, is Fontaine did set up a cordoned off area for people to sign that about a week ahead of time. And it was about 11 degrees on that day in February, just so you know. It was
okay. That was kind of my thought process.
But there might be an option that we could move that to where the Fontaine might help us with move that one beam to over where the actual old police station is, and maybe we can open that up for all the officers and everybody that's involved to sign it.
Yeah, we could definitely do that, just because it's closer to an existing the police station now. That was the problem with Beal, is that the existing Beal school is not right next door to the new Beal school.
Okay, that'd be great. I think as much community involvement we can get is just a good thing to have. So, thank you. Anything else on groundbreaking? Okay, that moves us to other business. Item 9. Anybody have anything? We covered a lot tonight. No, everybody wants to get out. Okay, next meeting. Neil, Matt, Ryan, what are we looking at? What do you need for our next meeting date? Are we a week out, 2 weeks, a month?
Probably a month on our end. Give us some time to get through the next round of conservation and planning board hearings. And
all right, let me pull up my calendar here. So we're looking at June 7th.
Sorry.
Does that work for everybody?
Works for me.
Okay. Alex, June 7th for our next regular meeting. And just a reminder for everybody, the Conservation Commission meeting, I believe, is on the 18th. That's a continued hearing, although They'll be updating the stormwater mitigation plan. Not sure when the planning board is meeting again next or when they're taking up.
That's June 3rd.
June 3rd. Okay. Thanks, Kristen. All right. Anything else, anybody? Okay, we have one correspondence, and that was a letter of the Police Station Building Committee from Stephen Belay, Chairman of the Shrewsbury Planning Board, regarding site plan approval, 150 Maple Avenue, proposed police station dated April 29, 2021. So noted. Okay. That's all I have. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor? Mo?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
Chief?
Aye.
Keith?
Aye.
Justine?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Donna?
Aye.
Myself? Aye. Thank you, everybody.